guys. I wanted to briefly clarify my stance on being an abolitionist versus being pro-life. I know there's a lot of talk about abortion right now, which I love that we're talking about it, but I am not supportive of the Texas bill, and I wanted to explain why for those of you who aren't familiar with the abolitionist movement and the fight against abortion. So I wrote my notes down so that I can try to be as concise as possible. If I just ad-lib, I'll probably talk for 30 minutes, but I'll try to get through this as quickly as possible. So again, I'm not pro-life, I'm an abolitionist. What is the difference with these, between these two terms? To help define these, I'm going to just paraphrase some information that I got off of the Abolish Human Abortion website. The term pro-life can be used to describe anybody who is against abortion. This term is not reserved for religious people. In fact, the establishment pro-life movement is largely secular, or at least ecumenical, which basically means interfaith. Pro-lifers embrace incremental legislation, which includes exceptions that allow for abortion to happen along the way to total abolition. Pro-lifers believe that we should generally avoid talking about sin and salvation and instead focus on science and saving babies. As an abolitionist is someone who is actively working to end abortion without compromise. Abolitionism cannot be separated from God and His truth. The gospel is at the center of our activism because it is the only real answer to the problem of abortion. With God's truth as our guide, we understand that abortion, by definition, is murder, and therefore it should not be regulated. Exodus 20:13 says that you shall not murder. And Proverbs 6:17 says that God hates the hands that shed innocent blood. And then abolitionists, we get our call from Proverbs 24:11, which says, rescue those being led away to death, hold back those staggering toward the slaughter. The Texas law allows for babies to be legally murdered prior to the detection of their heartbeat. It's important to understand that Republicans are to blame for this quote-unquote pro-life, or more aptly named regulated murder law. A Texas Republican voted against the bill for total abolition and voted in favor of murdering children under 6 weeks. As Christians, why would we celebrate this? Okay, so here are the common arguments you're going to get for keeping abortion legal. And even from Christians or people who claim to be pro-life are going to say, yeah, I'm pro-life except this. And so these are arguments you might find yourself sympathetic to. One, well, I'm against abortion, but what about the life of the mother? Okay, so the life of the mother basically is like ectopic pregnancies. One, these are rare. They don't justify a wholesale murder industry. Two, most babies are dead before the mother even knows their pregnancy is ectopic. Three, the procedure to remove the dead baby or the living baby if necessary after watchful waiting is not an abortion, and therefore this law would not affect mothers in this situation. The other situation where a mother's life might be in danger might be like later term in pregnancy, for example, preeclampsia. That usually happens around 20 weeks, and sometimes continuing in the pregnancy would mean that the mother has a very high chance of dying from like a stroke. And so in that case, again, abortion is not needed to save the life of the mother. We deliver the baby. And if a baby is born, for example, at 19 weeks, there's a very low chance that that baby is going to survive, but we're not God and we don't get to make that decision. So deliver the baby. You don't need to murder it. If it dies, then it dies, but then you don't have blood on your hands for doing that. Number two, the baby's not viable. Maybe the baby is developing without a brain, or there's some sort of thing where once they're born, they're going to die. We know that scientifically speaking, short of a miracle, they're going to die. Well, again, here, deliver the baby, don't murder it. We're not God. We don't get to decide who lives or dies. So when the baby is born, leave the results of that in God's hand. I personally know, or I should say not personally, but I follow somebody closely who's inspired me towards abolitionism, who adopted a baby that they knew had spina bifida while it was in the mother's womb. They had made the decision to adopt while the mother was pregnant. And so they had documentation that they had imaging showing that the baby's spine was growing outside of its skin. And, they said, it's okay, we're going to adopt, we're going to proceed. And when the baby was born, he was complete and healthy and whole. Another reason that I doubt many of you will be sympathetic to, but that we hear a lot from people who are pro-choice is like, well, what if they have Down syndrome? You know, my sister just had a baby a few days ago. She had a genetic test that said that the baby was likely going to be Down syndrome, like 70 to 80%, and he was perfect when he was born. So these are just ridiculous reasons. We don't get to decide, and it doesn't matter what the circumstances are of the baby, whether they're going to be deformed or not have a perfect life or not have some of the cognitive abilities that a normal baby would. Those aren't reasons to murder a baby. The Bible tells us that murder is wrong, therefore murder is wrong in all circumstances. It doesn't matter what different excuses we might have or how we might be inconvenienced by that child. And then 3, rape or incest. Rape, you hear this all the time. It's like the first argument the pro-choicers come with you at, and I really hope that Christians probably would get this. But I know that at one time, even as a professing Christian, I didn't really get it. I think, well, what about rape? You know? So, one statistic to know is that rape accounts for less than 2% of total abortions. So again, justifying the existence of a wholesale industry for this reason is a terrible argument. More importantly, the child should not die for the sins of the father. That is not justice. The father, the one who raped the mother, should be the one that is subject to the death penalty. Go and read Ezekiel 18, to get a better understanding of who is responsible for their own sin. And then finally, if we did make death penalty an option, if it was on the table for people who rape, then perhaps there wouldn't be any pregnancies resulting from rape. So maybe that's the reform we need to be looking at. And then I want to tackle the pragmatic argument. The main one is that if you challenge a Christian for their support of this law, they'll say something like, well, I want to see the abortion end, but I'm glad we can save some lives for now. And, I totally believe wholeheartedly that these people genuinely mean that. They genuinely mean well when they say that. I don't doubt their heart that they want to see abortion end and that they see this as kind of a stepping stone to getting there. But I want to remind you what it says in Ephesians 5:11. It says, have nothing to do with the fruitless deeds of darkness, but rather expose them. So as abolitionists, we reject the idea that we can effectively fight evil by allowing it in some cases, or by doing away with it in incremental steps which preserve it along the way. So just think about that. Like, do we really want to, in the meantime, affirm the argument that a baby is just a clump of cells before 6 weeks and we can go ahead and dispose of them, we can murder them so that we can save these lives? Or do we want to say, if murder is wrong, it's wrong no matter what? And I've used this before, but if you use the argument like, okay, let's take this argument outside of the womb, and I'm ad-libbing here, so bear with me for a second, but if you take this argument outside the womb and you said, okay, we have just made a law that says we can murder born babies who are beyond 6 weeks old. I'm sorry, we can murder the babies that are 6 weeks old or younger, but everybody else, you're not allowed to murder them anymore. Like, we would never say, oh, well, that's, we can't get what we want. Like, we're glad we can save these lives, but, the fact that a mother can choose to murder her 6-week-old or younger baby, it's just, we're going to have to take what we can get for now. We would never do that. We would never say that's okay. We would say, no, murder is wrong. It applies no matter what to a baby, whether they are at the cellular stage or whether they are at the mature stage of adulthood. So we need to be consistent in our application of God's law and not make rules that allow for the murder of children based on the detectability of their heartbeat, which, by the way, the people trying to detect the heartbeat are also the ones that will profit off of their murder when they don't find it. So stop and think about that for a second. Okay, so finally, what can you do? Okay, I know, again, I want to restate, I know that your views are genuine. We all want to see the end of abortion, but now that you have this information, you are responsible for it. So I would encourage you to repent of your former way of thinking, embrace God's truth, and take action. I know not everybody can come join me on the sidewalk as a missionary at Planned Parenthood, but you can start using terminology that gets people to think about this differently. One, just in your conversation about it, refer to abortion as murder. If you know somebody that is thinking about abortion, to ask them not to murder their child. Like, we need to call it what it is. We've used all these euphemisms that have helped us just kind of just blink out of our minds like what is actually happening. But we are ending an innocent human life, completely innocent human life in an abortion. So one, refer to it as murder. Two, stop thinking of the women as victims. I know as Christians, we often want to say things like, oh, well, the woman, she's a victim too, and we need to love her through this. I left a church last year where they had this philosophy that, you just like, we would come alongside the women after their abortion. I'm like, yeah, well, somebody's dead at that point, so no. We need to call abortion what it is. We need to be, in churches, be just affirming theology that says it's wrong, objectively wrong, no matter what the circumstance is. And so, again, I know not everyone can be on the sidewalk, but just start talking about it in a way that reflects reality, what it is. So finally, I'm just going to close really quick by reading something directly off of the Abolish Human Abortion website, and then I'll give you a couple of resources. So abolitionism, in summary, is just the Christian response to entrenched evil. The evil of abortion will be overcome by the people of God conquering the deeds of darkness by the blood of the Lamb and the word of their testimony, loving not their lives even unto death. Revelation 12:11. Just as Christians in the 19th century America would have been hypocritical and callous to hold an anti-slavery position while doing nothing to end the practice, we believe that all Christians are called to the non-violent task of working to end abortion rather than merely believing that abortion is wrong. Faith, if it hath not works, is dead. James 2:17. If we love our preborn neighbors as we love ourselves, we will not cease to agitate our culture, which again you can do through just using the right words, and assist our neighbors until the blood of the most helpless and innocent members of our society ceases to flow as a river through this land. Abolition is carried out by provoking a clash of absolutes between the ways of God and the wisdom of man. So I'll end with that. And then finally, I want to say just a couple of resources that you can check out. Go to Free the States. That's one good resource. The Doctrine of Balaam is a good resource. Abolish Human Abortion. And, Apologia Studios is probably one of my favorite that has gotten me involved in abolitionism. And then also out of Canada, there's Laura Klassen. I can't remember what her handle is. But she runs the organization Choice for Two. And follow her. She has an abolitionist mindset, but she does like satirical videos, and she's working on a new, I think it's an animated thing right now. To reach women who are abortion-minded. So I hope that helps, and if you have any questions, let me know.